Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this presentation. This was first presented on May 21st at the Community Forum and has now been recorded so that you or anyone else that could not attend has the opportunity to learn about this topic and participate in a feedback survey. My name is Cindy Detchen, and I am an administrator doing some special projects for the district. As always, I want to draw your attention first to our strategic plan, which is our guiding document. And it is also our roadmap for all the decisions that we make within our school district. We have 4 strategic points at the center of our plan: student experience and success, people and culture, family and community collaboration, and resources and services. We will focus our presentation on this last strategic point of resources and services. This guides us to maximize our resources and services through strategic investment, innovative practices, and continuous improvement processes to strengthen the school community and advance student outcomes. In order to do this, we have to develop and strengthen our existing partnerships. We have to make sure that we have clear systems and methods for communication and create sustainable systems. These are important for us to create accessibility and culturally responsive practices. It is crucial that we invest in our long-term facilities planning, maintenance, and capital construction for safety and health, for safe, healthy, and flexible learning environments. And equally important is to have effective decision-making processes that ensure financial stewardship and transparency. We value our community, which has overwhelmingly supported our schools and entrusted us with their tax dollars. We take that responsibility very seriously and account for every dollar spent through our bond processes. With that in mind, our goals for this presentation are to understand how the capacity in our schools is calculated and understand the different feeder systems that we have that operate under that structure. We'll also share our technology infrastructure that is needed to support our campus safety needs. And most importantly, we are here to seek your community feedback. I am now going to turn it over to Teresa Neff Webster, our Chief of Operations, who is going to walk you through our capital construction bond process.
Hello, I'm Teresa Neff Webster, and I'm going to be walking us through the capital construction bond process for the school district, as well as deeper dive into 2 of our recommendations regarding safety and technology infrastructure. So to ground us in timelines, the school district has gone to bond for every 10 years. We went in 2006, again in 2016, and we're now approaching 2026. And when we determine what to go to bond for, there's a 3-cycle process. We analyze our systems and establish categories of need and themes. We then work to go to bond, and once we have secured funding, we create a project timeline based on the amount we have been approved for, and then we implement the projects and oversee their completion. The 2016 bond, for the most part, has all of their projects completed. We have a few straggling smaller projects that we are finishing, but 6 months ago, we actually started in the analysis of systems and establishment of categories needs cycle. And that determines how we know what we are needing to invest in as a school district. And there's a few steps that we have gone through, and I'll walk us through those now. First, in the 2016 bond, there was a long-term facilities plan created for the school district. And what that means is a vendor came in and went into every building in the district and assessed all of the assets in the building. And an asset is things like boilers, windows, lighting, plumbing, HVAC, security systems, envelopes, etc. They went into every space and they ranked all of the assets in every space. And ranking means, is it in great condition, it's brand new, it's in good condition, it's running fine, it's in poor condition, it's of need of repair, or it's in critical condition. Critical meaning that it is in need of constant repair to maintain the systems operating. And the prioritization is then critical. Priority 1 is in poor condition, 2 and 3 priorities are in good or great condition. Once the assessment was done in each building, this assessment was correlated into a report for the entire district. So there's a report that came out with all the recommendations of assets that needed to be completed. This audit happened in 2022, and the report came out in 2023. So the question is, how are we to know what the current assets value is in 2025? For that, this year, the district has invested in the Incident IQ work order system, which is tied to our facilities department and our technology department. And every time there is an upgrade or a repair to any asset in our building, those teams put the information into Incident IQ, and that data is tied to the data from the facilities long-term facilities plan. So we have real-time data matching with our historical data around our assets. Once we have that combined list, we're able to create a prioritization list. What are all of the assets that are in critical disrepair? What are the assets that are in priority 1, 2, and 3? Once we were able to do that, we also had a separate vendor go into our buildings and review our safety mechanisms. What systems do we currently have in place? What systems do we need to consider when it comes to safety and security in our spaces? Additionally, what areas do we need to address if there's any potential OSHA hazards that need to be addressed? That audit also created a prioritization list. Similarly, critical priority 1, priority 2, and 3. We then were able to combine our two lists and take a look at all of the assets that needed to be addressed that are critical and priority 1 needs. And from that combined list and that prioritization process, we were able to think through and find themes that were rising up based on all the categories that were coming to be highlighted in that regard. So once we have done all of that, we've created the theme for our recommendation for the next bond and 5 categories that have risen to the top based on those prioritization lists. I'm going to walk us through the actual theme, the categories, and go into very high detail for each category as well. The theme that we have struck upon with our research is infrastructure stewardship, ensuring that we're taking all of the great work that was done in 2006 and 2016, and we are bringing it forward and maintaining all of those systems appropriately. And we're addressing critical and priority 1 needs as well. There are 5 categories within this theme: safety security, roof systems, technology infrastructure, ventilation thermal comfort systems, and critical maintenance. I'm going to dive a little bit into each one of these now. When we think about safety and security, we're thinking about cameras, communication systems, and emergency mapping for heightened and emergency scenarios. And I'll talk a little bit more about safety in a minute. When we're talking about roof systems, would be addressing all of the roof systems that are in need of complete replacement or critical repair. When we think about technology infrastructure, all of the systems in every category referenced has a technology upgrade or need associated with it. We also have a need to look at our cybersecurity measures and increase them. I'm also going to go a little bit deeper into technology in a moment. In regards to ventilation and thermal comfort systems, this is about taking what we have in our current buildings. So we have buildings that do not have HVAC, which is centralized air. Those buildings do not have the infrastructure to have HVAC put into them. But we are recommending that we partner with an architect and do a building by building analysis of every building that does not have HVAC system to determine what cooling and chilling systems could we bring into educational spaces to create more comfortable atmospheres for our students and staff. An example of this would be some of us in our homes have a wall unit, a split unit in the wall that brings in external air, recycles it, and chills it appropriately. This is one example of a variety of ways that we can think about making our spaces more comfortable for our students and staff that do not involve complete HVAC, centralized air in the buildings. Additionally, we're recommending continuing to work on our current HVAC systems and maintaining those systems at a high level so they do not fall into disrepair. And the final category is critical maintenance. Every bond has this category enclosed into the work that is done. We're simply calling it out that this is something we would also be looking into. Critical maintenance would be all capital projects that need to be done in our buildings at the critical level that do not fall into the other 4 categories as easily. An example of this would be if there's a building that is in need of all of the windows being replaced because they are no longer operating at a functional level. We would do the window replacement as a critical maintenance repair. So I've gone into our theme and into our categories. I'm now going to dive a little bit deeper into 2 of our categories, safety and security and technology infrastructure. When we think about safety and security, we really are thinking about building on our past investments. As an example, in the 2016 bond, we invested in safety vestibules for all of our buildings, which means each building has a buzzer system allowing staff in the building to determine who was trying to come in the building at any given moment. Prior to 2016, not all of our buildings had this. What we would be thinking about is also looking at our investments of our camera systems, ensuring that they are the most up-to-date and modern systems, and also looking at other safety technologies, such as sensors to detect vaping and other particulates in air. We would also be looking at a unified communication systems, which would provide a reliable way for staff and emergency responders to communicate. We are looking at investing in a wireless, wearable, voice-activated communication system that would allow for both day-to-day operations in our buildings to be much more efficient without the need for cell phones, but also in heightened and emergency situations, we would have these wearable devices activated and for when we use our response protocols to be much more efficient in our communication. And in the creation of these systems, we would have the need for enhanced digital emergency maps that are connected to our communication system, our camera systems, and our vape sensor systems. And this would allow both for the district level staff to have clarity around our maps and what's going on in every building, in every classroom, in every space. We would also have the ability for emergency responders to have access to these maps as well. When we're thinking about investing in technology infrastructure, we're really thinking about our digital backbone. And I like to think of our technology infrastructure as the plumbing and wiring for our digital space in the district. If you have a building that doesn't have good plumbing, it doesn't have water, it doesn't have strong wiring, it doesn't have electricity, it's not a very usable building. Similarly, if our network is not strong, robust, and strong enough to have multiple users on it to meet capacity, our technology tools will not be as effective. And we look at this as a long-term systems investment. We're not talking about buying computers every year. We're looking at the back-end, durable, long-lasting equipment and systems to support the computers that we currently have and are leasing. And in the future, we will have more devices connected to our network. Things like smart sensors that are becoming more and more popular in systems. And every system that we have in our buildings does have a network need. Things like our HVAC systems, security systems, even our refrigeration systems have network capacity that needs to be built in as well. And when we're thinking about faster speeds for all services, we're talking about the fact that when we have large amounts of students going onto the network at the same time, we do see slowing and sometimes crashing of the system. So an example would be if one of our high school has the need for 800 students to be online to take a digital exam, all of those students would not be able to take the exam at the same time at this point without our technology department doing pre-work to bring in hotspots to support appropriately. So we're really looking at investing long-term so that we can have large groups of students and staff on the network at the same time without any slowdowns or potential crashes. And finally, when we're thinking about our cybersecurity and networking, we are really thinking about building a digital highway when it comes to our network. Currently, I would say we have a 4-lane road mostly, and we have some good, strong 2-lane roads. But what we really need is a digital highway to ensure that we can have all of the students using the space at the same time. When we look at cybersecurity, what I call our digital locks and alarms, we really need to not only maintain our current measures, but increase them. Cybersecurity threats have unfortunately become much more prevalent and much more sophisticated in K-12 districts across our country. And in order for us to ensure our data is secure, we need to invest strongly in our cybersecurity measures, both what we're doing now and into the next 10 years. And finally, we want to think about wireless access for all. Currently, we do not have wireless access in our fields and playgrounds. And what that means is there are some systems that don't work with the way that we would prefer them to. An example is the wireless communication system I referenced earlier will work in our buildings inside, but will not work outside. And in order for it to be the most efficient communication system and safety system, we will need to have access to our outside spaces. We have other networking needs in our external class spaces as well that we need to address in this regard. And so this investment will mean that both our students and staff will have access to strong networks in our buildings and in our outdoor spaces as well. And with that, I will pass it back to Cindy Deschen to discuss the building capacity work we've been doing.
Thank you, Teresa. I am now going to walk us through our school capacity analysis and our enrollment projections. What is our capacity and how do we determine it at each school? First of all, we recently reviewed all of our school's floor plans with each of our school principals to verify the current usage. This is an important aspect of the process. We recognize that just because we have the floor plans that may have been developed by an architect when the school was first built or by a recent remodel, it doesn't mean it reflects the current use. We have a variety of programs that have been implemented since many of our schools were built. We move programs around the district at times when we have different needs for different school communities. And let's face it, times have changed and there are new needs in our schools. And we need to be adaptive to those needs. So after reviewing each of our school's floor plans, we worked in a small team with our instructional leadership team to develop guidelines for each school's capacity. In addition, each year we contract with Flow Analytics, a third-party demographer who reviews all of our current enrollment. They look at last year's data, and then they revise a 10-year outlook. We always have a 10-year projection, but it is updated annually and revised to make sure that we are reflecting any new information. This includes meeting with the jurisdictions that oversee development in the cities of Happy Valley and Milwaukee, as well as the county for unincorporated Clackamas County, in which many of our schools live. These are the three major jurisdictions that encompass all the different corners of our school district. They poll all of the applications for future housing or construction development, whether that's for future businesses, apartment complexes, individual houses. It doesn't matter. They look at all of that. They also review those jurisdictions' long-range plans, such as where are any parks going to be added, or are there changes for major roads going to happen? Are there zoning changes that could impact future development? They review that data along with birth rates, data from the last census, and any other pertinent information that would inform future enrollment for our K-12 school system. We then look at that report from Flow and develop a revised building capacity based on the current use, those projections, and our program needs. The following are some important definitions that will help guide our conversation. The maximum capacity of a school is simply a math equation. It's the total number of students that a school could accommodate if every classroom were fully occupied every period. So, in other words, if we had 25 students per classroom, say in an elementary school, and we have 20 classrooms in that school, that would theoretically accommodate 500 students. However, that leads to many limitations. It's an unrealistic picture of our classroom use because we have many other aspects of a school that need to be supported. So, we looked at what are the common spaces for every elementary school. We looked at what happens in our middle schools and our high schools, and what do they need in order to function to be fully operable. We then looked at some of those factors and applied it to our equations for new calculations. The functional capacity, therefore, in a school is a much more realistic estimate of the number of students a school can effectively accommodate. This takes account the realities of a classroom usage, how scheduling can affect a school, and the different uses that are needed to protect all of our students and support the programs that we currently have. The following are some guidelines and assumptions that we used for those calculations. Our elementary schools are staffed with one classroom teacher for every 25 students. These are classrooms for general education and do not account for all of the educators that work in a school. These are the dedicated classrooms in each of our elementary schools. We also make sure we have room for self-contained programs such as special education or perhaps a preschool program that is in that school, as well as any other support services that are needed. These could include rooms such as sensory spaces, sometimes called a regulation room, where students can receive emotional support, some guidance, or perhaps some counseling to be better prepared for learning. We also have designated spaces for supports that often happen in small groups outside of that general education classroom, such as English language development, one-on-one reading support, or speech and language therapy. And of course, every elementary school has a designated music and physical education classroom. The capacity guidelines and assumptions for secondary are a little different to accommodate the various scheduling needs. Middle schools are staffed at 29 students per teacher, and high schools are staffed at 32 to 1. While this is a staffing number, which represents the average class size, you will find a variety of class sizes at secondary depending on the type of classes offered. For instance, you may have a music classroom with a small jazz choir or jazz band with 15 or 18 students. But you'll also find a very large orchestra period or an a cappella choir that may have up to 60 or 65 students. Likewise, PE can accommodate more students, therefore, those ranges are generally between 40 and 45. There are also self-contained and instructional support spaces for students with special needs or for English language development as well. And there is one other factor to keep in mind, although it is not included in our calculation, because it gets a little too complicated to graph and it gets kind of in the weeds. But please note that at any given period during the day at any of our comprehensive high schools, that is Clackamas High School, Milwaukee High, Nelson, and Rex Putnam High School, there will be approximately 15% of their students not in the building at any given time. In other words, they are not sitting in those seats in the classrooms that are included in that functional capacity calculation. Because you see, those students have traveled to Saban-Schellenberg for their elective courses. It is something to keep in mind, knowing that there's a little bit more room in the graphs that you're about to see for our high school programs. The functional capacity of our secondary schools is calculated at 90% of our classrooms being used on a full-time basis. The following slides are divided into our feeder systems for our comprehensive high schools. These do not include our charters or New Urban High School. Each of those schools has its own cap and is either on open enrollment or a lottery enrollment and is not defined by geography. The first slide is Clackamas feeder. The elementary schools include Mount Scott, Oregon Trail, Spring Mountain, Sunnyside. These all feed into Rock Creek Middle School, which then feeds into Clackamas High School. I will first draw your attention to the green bar on the far right of each school's data. The green bar represents the functional capacity that we just defined in the previous slides of that particular school. The first blue bar is the first snapshot of 3. So there are 3 snapshots of time for that particular school. So the first bar is this school year. That enrollment number was taken on October 1st. That's the date in which we calculate enrollment and send it to ODE as our initial enrollment for the school year. The red bar is the projected enrollment for the year 2029-30. And finally, the yellow bar represents the 2032-33 school year. As you can see, all of the schools in the Clackamas feeder are projected to accommodate all the enrollment that we are forecasting in this feeder system. And while it looks like Mount Scott is really close to that line, that functional capacity, that green bar, please know that some of the classrooms in that particular school are used for some of our partner programs. And these are students that we accommodate and want to continue to partnership with in order to accommodate at that school. However, it does let us know that we could have an opportunity if for some reason that particular school started to have some enrollment bubble up. We could move one of those programs to an adjacent school and still be able to maintain our partnership and our support of the students in those programs. The next slide is Milwaukee feeder. This includes 6 elementary schools, which are Ardenwald, Llewellyn, Milwaukee, El Puente, Whitcomb. And in the middle there is Linwood Sojourner on one graph together. And while these are 2 different schools, they do occupy the same campus. Therefore, for the purposes of this presentation and our calculations here, is included in one graph. Similarly, all of the students will feed into Rao Middle School and then into Milwaukee High School. And similarly, like Linwood and Sojourner, Milwaukee Academy of the Arts also is included in Milwaukee High School's enrollment, as it is a charter school that encompasses the same campus, all included on the same campus. The green bar represents that functional capacity we've talked about, and the other 3 bars are the same snapshots in time as the previous slide. This current year, 24-25, the year 2029-30, and finally the school year 2032-33. And as you can see, we will be able to accommodate all of the current projected growth within that feeder system. The next slide is Adrian C. Nelson feeder. And as you will quickly notice on this graph, this is where we will go run into some challenges. The feeder system includes elementary schools Kennedy, Duncan, Happy Valley, and Scouters. All of those elementary schools feed into Happy Valley Middle School, which then feeds into Adrian C. Nelson High School. As you can see on this graph, the green bar is the capacity where we will have some issues at 2 particular schools, Scouters Mountain Elementary and Nelson High School. Within the next 3 years, more specifically, the projected enrollment shows that we will be either close to or at that functional capacity level in the year 2028-29 school year. And finally, we have the Rex Putnam feeder. This includes elementary schools Oak Grove, Billquist, Riverside, and View Acres. These all feed into Alder Creek Middle School, which in turn goes to Rex Putnam High School. You'll notice here that all of the schools within this feeder system have the capacity to accommodate all of their future projected enrollment. Finally, our implications. What are the takeaways? These 4 feeder systems show that there are enough seats across our entire school district for all of our students in the next 10 years. However, 2 schools in the Nelson feeder are projected to be at or near the functional capacity by the 2028-29 school year. As Teresa already mentioned, our future bond funds are greatly needed for the infrastructure needs across our district. It's important to know that any future bond would not be able to generate enough funds for any major renovations or to build new schools or add new wings unless we were to significantly increase the tax rate that our voters are already currently paying on our bonds. Now that you have been made aware of our future needs, we would like to give you the opportunity to think about how we might be able to accommodate all of our students. The guests that were at our community forum earlier this week had the opportunity to talk with each other on the next slide, as you can see, with this question. They shared these ideas among themselves, and then we asked them to share those same ideas through a survey that we will be providing with you at the end of this presentation. Before we go to that survey opportunity, I'd like to remind you of our timeline of this process. We started back in March with a general topic of our district operations at the March session of our year-long Community Conversations series. We then divided up some of those topics for a deeper conversation. In April, we had an overview of the types of funding sources available to the public school districts in Oregon that support our schools, and in particular, the capital construction and infrastructure needs. It's important to note that Oregon does not provide funding for capital construction. It is solely left up to local school districts and their communities to support that effort. Here we are at the May topic on technology, safety, and infrastructure, and enrollment and capacity. While we will break for the summer, while our facility staff works to get our buildings ready for the new school year, and we will come back in August where we will provide some very fun and interesting details about their work in maintaining the operations of our buildings. That will then lead us into our Superintendent's Bond Advisory Committee that will launch in September. That will inform our future bond planning. This will be a several-month process, and there is an opportunity for you to express your interest in being part of that work. You may sign up on a link on our capital construction website. It'll also be linked at the end of this presentation. Please follow that link if you would like to receive more information about that opportunity. It does not obligate you, nor does it guarantee you a spot on that committee, as we will need to make sure that our committee represents all of our district and its various components. We are now going to ask you for your feedback. Please scan this QR code or click on the link below, and you will see that it takes you to a thought exchange. This is a survey tool that we use. It was opened up earlier this week when we had our in-live sessions of our forums. You'll see several comments and thoughts already, perhaps from your neighbors, community members, staff members, or from other parents. And now this is your opportunity to provide your thoughts and ideas on these topics. Also, be sure to check back a couple of times over the next week or two to see what new thoughts have been added, because you have an opportunity to star or rate the thoughts that you read from your other constituents. This allows us to know what really resonates with the majority of our community. However, know that all thoughts are taken into consideration, all will be recorded, and none of them attach your name to them, an email address, or an IP address. This is all completely anonymous. I'd like to thank you for your time in reviewing this presentation, and certainly for your participation in the thought exchange. Your voice and ideas are very important to our process, and to make sure that we hear from all of our constituents. To follow the rest of this pre-bond process, please bookmark the link on this last slide. This is our capital construction website, where you will find a video from the last forum and where you will see a link to the thought exchange in the Bond Advisory Committee interest form. This is where we will also share any updates for future meetings or any of the results of the surveys. Again, we appreciate your time and we look forward to hearing from you.